Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of Pokemon Duel Analysis. Today, I want to talk about the Water deck, Grass deck, and the Dragon deck in the current meta. As we discussed last week, those three decks are some of the decks I think that are really the strongest decks in the current meta. So today, I want to go into details of what's the strategy of them, how to build them, and how to counter their strategy. So first off, we'll start off by looking at the Water deck. Water deck really is the focus of this month's banner with the Primal Kyogre as well as a bunch of buff to the existing figures. So the strategy is to ignore your own entry point and spread confusion to the opponents, as well as they got a high damage potential from the Kyogre. This Kyogre, I refer to both the normal Kyogre and the Primal Kyogre. Before the new banner, there's really few water figure that has a high damage potential. Now with Kyogre and also buff to some of the existing figures, I think Water deck really has some of the best beaters in the game right now. And its strength is really that they have a lot of counter to the other decks. If you take a look at the three figures I have listed here on the upper right corner, you see Feeny is really good counter to the Rush deck. Manaphy with the new buff is really counters the Fire deck. And then Primal Kyogre destroys the UB deck. And they also have a relatively flexible roster spots and will be able to splash figures from other types. This is because the payoff for the Water decks is really just Feeny and Manaphy, and they don't require a lot of water figure to be effective. Some of the weaknesses of this deck is that there's relatively more utility figures than other decks because you have Manaphy and Tapu Fini, which are not really a beater by any stretch of imagination. Milotic also can be considered a beater, but it has a huge blue segment, and most people will probably expand that segment. They couldn't really consistently knock out other figures. So they do have Primal Kyogre, but overall they might have some trouble beating other figures. It also relies really heavily on the supporting figures, and there's really not that much figure that has a infiltrator ability, so the mobility is really low in general. Some tips when playing against the Water deck is that you need to be aware of the position of the Feeny, as she negates the status condition for both sides, so you can try to position your figure in a way such that they couldn't really confuse your figure. You need to be aware of whether attacking the Feeny will result in a Pony Wish that could lose you the game. And then if they are well set up to bypass the entry points, you need to realize that early and don't try too hard to seal the entry anymore, and instead try to go for their goal. Some of the key figures is here. In my opinion, the first three are really the key figures. The reason I also listed Poliwrath and Milotic in the key figure column is that I think spreading the confusion is pretty key to their success, as I don't think Water deck really should try to outdamage your opponent. It's nice to have Primal Kyogre, maybe even two of them, to really beat up on other figures, but I think the strength of Water deck is really to have Poliwrath that really guarantees confusion, also the Milotic, which is a really good defensive figure. Other role player in this archetype includes Seikun, which is really good figure. It fixes the status conditions as well as removes the curse counter, and has a knockout move that can be really nice against some of the high damaging figures. And Swampert and Mega Swampert basically is another beater and provides some mobility which the Water deck is lacking. Cardio, I think, is a very underrated figure right now, as it has the blue that can move itself 2 spots, and then it also combines very well with the new Resolute form, which could do the Hydro Kick plus change form to prevent itself from going to the PC, which basically can move a figure away even if you lose the battle. And Greninja, I know lots of people are excited for its buff. I personally is not a huge fan of it, just because even if it's 40 per water shuriken, it's still not very reliable. And even if you hit it twice, it's not that high of damage. So it's not a bad figure by any means, but I don't think it's like a top figure. So next up, we have the grass deck. The grass deck really is flying under the radar, I think. That because it didn't have a new figure come out, just bunch of buff to the existing figures, especially the buff to Laurentis, really makes it a top deck in the meta. The strategy really is all about the buff from Laurentis. So the strategy is just to have multiple Laurentis on the field to turn all your grass figures into threats. And they also have the Grass Sphere and Tapu Bulu to force the opponent to play the high damage game by ignoring the knockout and move to PC abilities, which are commonly what is good against the high damage figures. And the strength is really the high damage on most figures after it's set up. And also, the figures are weak to the status condition, but because of they use a lot of evolution and also has the tropical energy, so it has some resistance to the status condition. So if you're sacking a figure to get a status condition onto a grass figure, it may not be good enough. The weakness of the deck is that it's highly dependent on the double engine boost from Laurentis, and if you can get a Pony Wish or being able to attack one of the Laurentis to knock it out, they will be in a much weaker position. It also needs most of its figure to stay on the battlefield to maintain the advantage. And it's also because of it needs all 6 figures to get the maximum number of damage boosts, so it's weak in the long game. So the tips is to try to pick off weaker figures early, because every figure in the grass deck is important. So if you can find a good matchup, go for it. And if you find yourself down figures, cycle through your figure and try to take out some of their figure, so that you can take the game to the late game before they seal your entry points. And if you got a chance, try to go after Laurentis and knock it out, or has some status condition on it, so that force them use their plates, and once they run out, you'll find an opening to win. The key figure for the grass deck is needless to say is Laurentis, and usually they run 2 at least, and I can see running 3 because I personally don't have too much experience running grass decks, so I couldn't say for sure if 3 Laurentis is better than 2, but it could be. For role players, they have Tapu Bulu, Rowlet, Trico, and Virizion Sliming here. I think a lot of people think Tapu Bulu is a key figure in the deck, but surprisingly it's not. In the last month's top 100 decks, there are 16 grass decks, but less than half of them run Tapu Bulu. I don't think it's because of the availability. It's just because it's not necessary to run Tapu Bulu because of the grass sphere. But Tapu Bulu does help against knockout, which the grass sphere doesn't. So it could be a good choice. And Rowlet and the Trico evolution line really provides the high damage going into the late game. And overall, I think because of Decidueye and Virizion, Tapu Bulu, Sliming, they all have some kind of infiltration. So their movement is excellent as well. And the last deck I want to talk about is the Dragon deck. Dragon deck really was the focus of last month with the introduction of Mega Rayquaza. In this month's banner also gained a new figure in Turtonator, which is also a very viable role player in this deck. So let's take a look. The key strategy for the Dragon deck again is really to overpower the opponent with the Mega Rayquaza and all the other very high damaging Dragon figure, especially doing Mega Rayquaza's Mega turn, because all the blue become misses. The Dragon Sphere really provides the movement to pass through opposing figures, makes them a really threatening force. The strength of this deck is again a high damage on each of the individual figures. This is kind of different from what the grass deck or the water deck is doing. Most of the dragon figures doesn't need the buff from the Altaria to get out a really high damage, because all of them are originally 1 MP figure that has a huge damage already. So it's nice to have Altaria, but it's not needed. So each individual figure's power are really high. And also during Mega Rayquaza's turn, there are very few figure could stop the extreme speed from it. There are a few that I will mention later, but there's really like you need to have a plan against it. And the extra damage boost and possible exclusion from Altaria really provides another angle for this strategy as well. The weakness of the Dragon deck is that it really highly depends on the Dragon Sphere figure to help with the movement, because oftentimes the Dragon deck will have 3 1MP figures, which is not like a place you want to be. And so if you can knock out the Dragon Sphere figure, then all of a sudden all their figure becomes so slow they could collapse instantly. And they're really slow to set up, as you need to use the Dragon Sphere, you need to get this Dragon Sphere figure out. If you use it on 1MP figure, you have to move to the entry first and then out. So it's really slow to set up, even slower than other decks. And most of the Dragon figures are also weak to status conditions, because they don't have like a small dodge or something that can soak up the burn and paralyze. So status conditions are normally very good against the Dragon figures. So the tips to play against them is that try to take advantage of their slow setup. Maybe try to put them in an awkward spot so that they couldn't move set up as freely as they want to. Maybe rush one of their entry so that they will be even take longer to set up. And you need to also have a plan against Rayquaza's Mega turn, either by stalling or have status condition so that prevent them from sweep through all your figures. The key figure for this deck is Altaria and Mega Rayquaza. Altaria, although I put it here as key figures, but I don't think it's necessary at all, because all the figures have high damage already. But it's nice to have it, and the Mega Rayquaza is really the essence of this deck, and it's where all the power lies. The role player for this deck includes Turtonator, which is the new figure that is very good against Zoroark, but it's a defensive figure more than an offensive figure. It may not be the most consistent in terms of knocking out figures. Drumpa was one of the important player in the old meta where there's tons of UB. In the new meta, I think UB are not relevant anymore, so probably Turtonator will take its place. And I personally think Turtonator might be a better figure overall. Shiny Ray Also another important figure during the UB meta. Now, I think the only reason you want to run it is because they have one extra MP when coming out, which is a viable option, but I personally don't think it's as essential as Turtonator or Drampa in this deck. Vibrara, on the other hand, is one of the figures I like seeing in Dragon decks or all the decks in general, really. Vibrara really slows down the development of opponent. So, because the Dragon deck really requires a long time to set up, Vibrara really can help get you the time you need to set up. So it's an excellent figure to put your Dragon Sphere on as well. Noibat is also an excellent runner and has purple attack, which also provides another angle of attack for this Dragon deck. One figure that I do want to mention is Simon Skyform. I know not much people play it. I personally have it in my Dragon deck, and I think it's excellent. The reason is that because it's so hard, so slow for the Dragon deck to set up, I think it's worth it to sacrifice some of its power to get more smooth setup. Simon Skyform is actually a perfect figure for it because it helps the 1 MP figures to get out early, and then later once it's knocked out, it can turn into landform, which can extend the mega turns for Mega Rayquaza. So I personally think it's a very good figure in this deck, and I consider it key to my deck, but let me know what you think. So now, after I introduce all 3 decks, let's do some damage comparison. Here I listed some of the figure that deals most damage from all 3 decks, and consider its like highest base damage and the buff, and see what their total damage is. So I won't go into each of the details, but we can see that the highest damaging figure is Subtile if it rolls the Leaf Blade twice, or the Primal Kyogre, which with 3 mana fee. So that's it, we're done. No, I'm just kidding. Because in reality, no one can really put 3 mana fee in your water deck and expect success. I mean, you could do that, but I personally don't see it working. Ideally, I think the water deck will at most have 1 mana fee. I would consider 2, but I don't think that's like really good setup because it really slows you down, and it's not a very offensive figure at all. So in reality, I think water deck will only have 1 mana fee. For grass deck, it will definitely have 2 Lorentas, maybe 3. I will just have 2 right here, and you can do the adjustment as you set up your own deck. And for the dragon, the Altaria is not essential again. I don't think it's essential at all to the deck. I have 2 Altaria here just for reference, but I can definitely see only 1. I know some deck will run 3, but I personally don't like running 3 Altaria in the dragon deck. So now we see the total damage comes to a little bit more reasonable. We see that the grass deck, even if they only have 2 Lorentas out, it can shoot up the highest damage. The Mega Ray definitely is threatening at 210, and it's pretty high damage, but it only lasts for 7 turns. So overall, I think the grass deck has the best damaging potential across the 3, and the grass deck really, like, all its figures have such a huge chunk of well being damaging well compared to like a water deck. So grass deck really is focusing on knocking out other figures, while the other decks are maybe have some more game other than just dealing damage. So so how do you beat this insanely high damage going forward? So here are some of the figures that I can think of or are being used right now to deal with them. I have the figure's name here, and I also included a column against Rush. The reason being that maybe I thought that Rush deck will die down with the popularity of Water deck, but maybe it's not that easy for them to just go away, and you need to also consider how's your matchup against Rush. So let's go over this in some more detail. A return of Mew, I could say, is because of the we're seeing less and less Coco, and it's excellent against the Dragon deck because most of the Dragon deck have damage over 100 and have some portion of its wheel being purple, so the Mew has a high chance of surviving and sometimes knocking out the dragon figures. It's fine against the water, especially against the primal Kyogre, and I also enjoys having confusion because most of it will becomes the blue. Against grass, it's not that good because they have some small figures evolutions that it will eat the Mew for its evolution, so it's not good there. Zoroark is pretty nice against dragon decks. It's good against Rush. Against grass, it depends on how you play it. It can be excellent, but on their turn, if they have Tapu Bulu, Zoroark's effect will be negated. Against water, I think if Zoroark gets confused, it will have a huge dodge, which is fine, but you wanted to try to knock out their primal Kyogre, so I think it's just okay. Lucario is excellent against Dragon, both because it's immune to Gold attack, so Rayquaza couldn't touch it at all. It's good against Rush. It's for against water and grass, you need to play smart and also identify when to attack their figure and when to dodge their confusion, etc. Terrakion also is, I think maybe this one is kind of fading a little bit because the departure of UB deck, which is what it was primarily countering. It's really bad against Dragon because Dragon doesn't have a lot of dodges, so Terrakion has a really bad matchup there. Against grass, it's good at picking off some of the pre-evolution figures, but it may not have a place in the late game. Against Rush, it's pretty nice because it has kind of an even matchup against Zoroark. Against water, I think it does pretty well. You need to preserve it from being confused, but if you can preserve it, it's the only attacker that you can safely attack Fini with, and it also can attack Milotic because Milotic has a huge brew, and even Primal Kyogre has a sizable brew, so Terrakion has some uses there. Tapu Fini, I think, is an excellent figure. It's great against Rush, as the Tapu Fini with a few water figure really completely counters the Rush deck. It's okay against Dragon, but Dragon has a lot of gold attacks, so Fini can die very easily. Against grass, again, you need to play smart and try to preserve it, and if you can land a Pony Wish, it become excellent because it will exclude one of their Laurentus, which is huge advantage for you. Against water, it's also fine, but you need to again avoid getting confused. Combustion, I think is great against the water and rush deck with its move to MP move, and against dragon it's okay, and it's pretty bad against grass because the grass sphere can prevent the movement. Poryrath as a reliable confusion user is pretty much very good against all of them, but not exceptionally good because Poryrath can confuse a figure guaranteed, but most of the time it will also die himself. So it's kind of a trade-off, but if you can confuse one of their key figures, it might be worth it. Vibrara, I think, is a great figure to have in your deck. It's a great utility figure that provides utility to stall their like Mega and stall their Rush. So overall, I think it's a very good figure to have in your deck. That's about it for this episode, and hopefully you guys enjoyed it. So lastly, I also want to talk about some of the topics I have in mind that I'm planning for this channel. And if you find one of them particularly interested to you, please leave a comment below so that I know like which one has more interest, so that I will do it first. So let me explain them a little bit. First one is what do you need to beat the rush decks? I thought that the water decks are really a hard counter to the rush deck, but apparently water deck is not the biggest proportion of the meta, and rush deck can still exist. And a lot of people don't have a proper tools to deal with them. And I just want to talk about what you need to have in your deck, what preparation you need to beat the rush deck. Then another topic is a tip for players starting up and climbing towards 3.2k. 3.2k is just a pretty random rating I just had in mind. For this one, I just have some tips on how you play the game, how you approach a particular game for a newer player to really step up your game. At least that's what I think would be helpful. Then another topic is that I want to analyze and do some suggestion on when do you want to pull on the boosters, because the resource is really limited in this game, and which deal to buy because there are several of them out there. So some suggestion there. And then lastly, how to build a gym deck. This I want it to be a more general discussion, but probably I will do this for the next gym. But yeah, that's about it. If you guys have any suggestion on a topic, also let me know. And lastly, I just want to really thank you guys for all the support, and you guys' support are awesome and really is what motivates me to continue this channel. It's actually a lot of work for me, but I thought because all you guys were so awesome and was very supportive in my first video, that really helped me fight through my laziness to get this video out. So thank you guys, and I'll hope to see you next time. Thanks, bye.